Hello, my name is Master Sergeant Mark Jenkins, Principal Euphonium of the President's Own United States Marine Band. It seems that the Marine Band has always been at the leading edge of technology, whether using the newest, most modern instruments and digital recording techniques, traveling around the world wherever railroads, motor coaches, or airplanes would take us, or beginning in 1889, experimenting with Thomas Edison's newest recording equipment. It should not have seemed surprising that the band would also get involved in radio while it was still in its infancy. Taylor Branson, the Marine Band's assistant director from 1921 to 1927, and director from 1927 to 1940, showed great interest in the possibilities of radio and is likely responsible for leading the band into the forefront of early radio broadcasting. On May 17, 1922, the Marine Band made their very first radio broadcast from the Anacostia Naval Air Station in Washington, D.C. The short program actually featured a small orchestra, but the band very quickly became the principal ensemble used in most future broadcasts. These first broadcasts eventually turned into a series with weekly concerts being aired through September of each year. Branson, although he was the assistant director, led the band in almost all of the early programs. On February 14, 1923, the broadcast was moved to the Band Auditorium at Marine Barracks, Washington, which became the permanent site for all future indoor broadcasts. In 1924, the band's outdoor summer concerts began to be broadcast. By 1925, almost all of the Wednesday night concerts at the U.S. Capitol Building and Thursday night concerts at the Sylvan Theater on the grounds of the Washington Monument were broadcast by the local WRC radio station. By 1926, all band and orchestra concerts in the winter and outdoor concerts in the summer were being broadcast over WRC. Other radio series the Marine Band performed included the Marine Corps Communicates with Mr. Knight programs, which premiered on December 21, 1923, the School Band Educational Series, which began in December of 1928, and the 4-H Club Farm and Home Hour Music Appreciation Series, which began on June 22, 1929. By 1930, the band or orchestra could be heard typically 3 or 4 times a week, and sometimes more, on both the local WRC and NBC radio networks. Without question, the Marine Band's longest-running and most successful radio series was the Dream Hour for the Shut-Ins program. Originally called the Hour for Shut-Ins, the Dream Hour was broadcast once a week and featured a typical Marine Band concert with marches, orchestral transcriptions, patriotic tunes, and a featured soloist. Friday, June 12, 1931, is the date listed in the Marine Band archives as the first shut-in show transmission. It was broadcast from 10 to 11 a.m. on WRC NBC radio. During the second broadcast, the following Friday, the show's announcer sent over from NBC was a young Arthur Godfrey, who went on to become a household name in America as both a radio and television personality. Each of these broadcasts had to be meticulously planned and executed amid the band's amazingly busy schedule. The shut-in hour was broadcast weekly from June 12th through the end of the year, with only the period during the band's fall tour being missed. The programs were 1 hour in length and were always performed in front of a live audience.
Travel back with us in time today, 20 years in time, to the Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C., June 12, 1931.
Presenting the first Dream Hour program, Music for the Shut-Ins.
The popularity of the program across the country was tremendous. The Marine Band broadcasts and those by the newly formed Army and Navy bands may have been the only music programs on radio at the time where listeners could request specific compositions and actually expect to have a decent chance in hearing them. Unfortunately, none of the hundreds of request letters and cards addressed to the band over the years have survived. The one exception is a letter written by Marine Band Private Donald Kimball in response to a special request from a fan. Kimball was only 19 years old when he joined the band as a euphonium player in 1932. He was also single, a fact that did not go unnoticed by announcer Arthur Godfrey. In the early years of the Dream Hour show, the script was largely written by Godfrey, and when he couldn't find anything to say about a particular piece, he often improvised. In the summer of 1933, after one of Kimball's first solo performances, Godfrey began to ad-lib by describing Kimball over the air as an eligible young bachelor and encouraging the young ladies in the audience to write a fan letter to Private Kimball. One young lady, Miss Lucille Sadler from Cleveland, Ohio, was listening and wrote a letter to Kimball. Donald replied and enclosed a picture of himself wearing his Marine uniform and holding his double-bell euphonium. A little over a year later, the young couple was married in Cleveland before moving back to Washington, where Private Kimball was eventually promoted to the principal euphonium position in the Marine Band. Euphonium soloists were a popular feature of the Dream Hour concerts, beginning with one of the first broadcasts in 1922, when euphoniumist Charles Viner was featured with the band performing American composer James Bland's popular song, "Take Me Back to Old Virginia," over a local Virginia radio station. The second half of today's concert will feature the newest member of the Marine Band euphonium section, Staff Sergeant Hiram Diaz, performing Armando Pichi's Virtuosic showpiece, Fantasy Originale. Pichi is remembered primarily as an Italian opera critic and scholar. He also tried his hand at composing, completing at least 2 operas and this original fantasy, which is representative of the many Italian opera-themed solos of the late 19th century. While it is unclear which instrument this piece was originally written for, it was arranged for euphonium in the early 20th century by the Italian-American euphonium virtuoso Simone Mantia. Mantia's arrangement was first published in 1908 and remains a standard in the euphonium repertoire to this day. Simone Mantia joined the Sousa Band in 1896, replacing his teacher Joseph Raffaello as John Philip Sousa's principal euphonium soloist. During his career, Mantia wrote many compositions and arrangements for solo euphonium and band, most of which were set in the popular theme and variations format, so common to that era of American band music. With titles like Fantasy Originale, Auld Lang Syne, and Believe Me If All Those Endearing Young Charms, Mantia designed his solos to hook an audience with a familiar melody or popular tune, then show off his uncontested mastery of range, flexibility, and technical skill through each virtuosic variation. Another piece you'll hear on the second half of today's program was the most frequently requested piece in the mid-1930s. It wasn't a Sousa march, nor a transcription from the orchestral repertoire. It was the popular song entitled "Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing" that many know from Disneyland's Enchanted Tiki Room. As time went by, improvising by the announcers became far less common, and the shows developed a dedicated radio script. In addition to providing program notes for the music, the announcers had also begun actively recruiting for the United States Marine Corps. The Dream Hour's time slot varied greatly on NBC and was even canceled some weeks on account of events such as the World Series or other newsworthy occasions. The band was always made available to broadcast without any charge or sponsors. Consequently, the non-commercial program frequently took a back seat to sponsored radio shows. The March 28, 1940 broadcast featured the retirement of Captain Taylor Branson as the Marine Band's 20th director. He was the pioneer and moving force behind getting the band on the air and making it a priority in the band's schedule. It was a fitting tribute to honor his over 40 years of service to the Marine Corps in a radio broadcast. Lieutenant General Thomas Holcomb, 17th Commandant of the Marine Corps, attended the on-air ceremony, with President Franklin D. Roosevelt sending a letter of appreciation which was read over the air as part of the ceremony. It has come to my attention that you are today being ordered home to await retirement on April 1, 1940, for physical disability incident to over 40 years service in the Marine Corps. I wish to take this opportunity to express to you my deep appreciation of the services you have rendered as leader of the Marine Band, many details of which were closely connected with White House functions, the rendition of honors to important visiting personages, and numerous other Allied ceremonies. Your cheerful, efficient, and most cooperative efforts have inspired the most favorable comment on every hand, and I desire to add my personal thanks at this time to those of so many others. I am certain that the members of the Marine Band will miss your able leadership as much as your absence from White House events will be noted here. And may I say to you that you have my every wish for many years of life and happiness. The first broadcast of 1942 was called the Patriotic Dream Hour for shut-ins following our entry into World War II. The cancellation of the Marine Band's annual concert tours during the war allowed the band to remain on the air without a break, and regular broadcasts continued throughout the war years. Other unique Dream Hour broadcasts included the Marine Corps Women's Reserve Band, a group of exceptional female Marine musicians handpicked for the service and mentored by members of the Marine Band, who made their debut on a broadcast on November 1st, 1944. A somber memorial program was played on April 13th, 1945, marking the untimely death of President Roosevelt, and the Marine Band celebrated its 150th anniversary over a broadcast on July 11th, 1948, with actor Edward Arnold of the Mr. President radio show serving as the announcer. Except for periods of time when the band was out of Washington for special trips or on tour, the Dream Hour continued to air live through 1949. In December 1950 and January 1951, the band's leader logbook indicates that for the first time, the Dream Hour program was pre-recorded for later broadcast. The broadcast on Friday, June 8, 1951, featured a special celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Dream Hour with announcers Mac McGarry and Kennedy Ludlum narrating. The program opened with the Marines hymn and featured the ever-popular Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing, and a telegram of congratulations from NBC President Joseph McConnell.
As our 20th anniversary Dream Hour program draws to a close, we take a moment to read a message from Mr. Joseph McConnell, President of the National Broadcasting Company, the network that for 20 years has had the pleasure of bringing the music of the world-famous United States Marine Band to the people of America. Major Santillan, it is with the greatest personal pleasure that I express my sincere congratulations to you and the members of the Marine Band on your 20th anniversary with the National Broadcasting Company. I speak for all of NBC when I say that we have enjoyed the association, as have our many listeners. I look forward to a continuing and successful association in the years ahead.
Recordings were made weekly from January 8th through to the final show on September 3rd, 1954, the 952nd program in the series. That episode concluded what was then the longest continuing series on network radio. In 2008, the 27th Marine Band director, Colonel Michael Colburn, initiated a new tradition of live Dream Hour reenactment concerts, featuring the band with announcer Dennis Owens of WGMS Radio in Washington, D.C. Other reenactments followed in 2010 with Mark Shields of the PBS NewsHour, and in 2013 with Michael Mira of the nationally syndicated Don and Mike Show. We are pleased that Robert Aubry Davis of XM Radio's The Millennium of Music is with us today as we revisit the golden age of radio.